Assalamu alaikum fam, hope you're doing fantastic. So, I used to hear a lot of liberal talking heads say it is not about culture war or social issues. It all has to come down to economics. For a long time I believed this. And when I was a liberal atheist who was very smug, I thought, it is all about money. It's all about, wages and GDP factors of that issue. Trade prices, tariffs, all that. And that cultural war issues are primitive, in the past, and don't matter and don't affect society. But now that we've seen how far things are sliding downhill, and that a lot of the warnings of what conservatives said are coming true concerning how far the left is going, I have jumped off that left-leaning ship now, and I never plan on getting aboard that ship again. I disagree with a lot of the things some of the conservatives do in America, but since they are religious, and I am becoming more dedicated to my religion and following the rules even more and learning, I cannot side with secularist atheists who have a different moral code. And a moral code that every day proves to be separate. Okay? Proves to be separate of what Islam values and what Allah decrees for us. And I was thinking to myself, what is the whole world worth with all its gold if children can't be protected, if manhood can't be protected, and motherhood isn't sanctified? And how they change what words mean, right? Who's considered a woman now, and who's considered a man? How they're warping our minds into their own delusions and mental illness. And I realized, why are we listening to these liberal atheists, a lot of them who are childless? Why are we listening to people who can't control their alcoholism, control their drug addictions? Why are we taking what they say as like the right way to live? And why are we letting people who worship lab coats dictate to us our moral policy? Why are we doing that? If we need a scientist to tell us about the atmosphere on the moon, okay. But a scientist isn't going to tell us where our soul goes when we die. And we need to draw a hard line of what we go to the scientists for, where their position is in society, and where they should be placed, and understand that not every scientist has the same moral code, and that we must be wary. The way these young college types talk about modesty also is disturbing. They mock it like, oh, modesty. What are you, a conservative Christian? And you realize they have no idea and no inner nature to want to protect the sanctity and innocence of children. And then you find when they do have children, they've been so indoctrinated with what these universities have funneled into their brains that they no longer see the classical motherhood as ideal, right? Where you want your daughters to cover up, where you want them to carry themselves with grace and composure, and how the liberal atheists do idolize female musicians more than any religious person. This is something that I'm realizing more and more every day. These women in these universities, they idolize the women who objectify themselves while at the same time saying men are toxic for objectifying women. And what's really scary is how they're really tempting away people from seeing the safety and security which comes with modesty. Yes, there's going to be people who violate people no matter what, right? But when us mothers who are trying to instill a religious code in our daughters have to keep them inside as this horrific pride parade goes down the street and there's kink and degeneracy, on public property, not in a stadium where you can pay a ticket and you get in and they can, fine, the law says you can do whatever you want in your hedonistic parade. Okay, you're in a facility, all right? Out of sight, out of mind. I wish it didn't exist, but the law says you can do it, go over there. But now they want to be out in the street, and they want to shock your kid's retina, and if you speak out against it, they label you. And they say it's good for kids to see this. And there's been several news stories where teachers during Zoom calls, there was one teacher who was caught masturbating. There was one teacher who they've been showing children younger and younger about the topic of masturbation. Okay, this is why it's important to get out of the corporate news bubble, because that's pure propaganda. You can get a couple things from it, but it is controlled, right? These are big money donors with their own ideals pressing on you. I think most people in the world know that. You always want to make sure there's a real journalist, independent journalist you're following, right? Who cares about truth and information. But know that you should be getting more of your news from non-corporate sources. Don't believe Rachel Maddow and CNN and MSNBC and those alphabet media. Very rarely can you ever believe anything. And those are not journalists. Those are just talking heads who are told what to say and they make millions per year. They're complete sellouts. These are not real people. And they're artificial. They have no original thought. They say whatever, they're told to say, as Project Veritas and other whistleblowers have pointed out. So, we must be very careful with how we think about society's values. And this is why I realize that the left, they want a very hedonistic lifestyle, and I didn't believe it in the past. But the more I've been listening to a lot of the talking heads on the left, some of them still focus on anti-war policy and stuff like that. But when you hear their cultural perspective, their social perspective, you realize who they are. And you're like, okay, this is why you have to decide what's more important. I do think now that the social cultural is more important than the economic. Because what would be the point of you having a big fancy house and car if you look out your window and there's just somebody humping on your lawn? And there's some law where you can be naked or something like that. Now you might think I'm being hyperbolic, but at the same time, the left wants to make prostitution legal. And yes, they might put regulations to where it has to be inside a building, but right now, there's homeless people who can use drugs openly in the street and not go to jail. And the left supports that. If you look Street People of Los Angeles, they constantly post videos where people are using drugs on the bus, they're smoking outside on the boardwalk, they're not able to get arrested. And as they expand their permissibility of drug use, they say this will harm the cartels, but the cartels will actually just open up legitimate businesses. I mean, the cartels also go to little small restaurants and demand money from them and then extort them. So, being soft on crime isn't going to help. And, for example, the left constantly says they don't like the death penalty. So, us conservatives, because now I think I'm going to consider myself conservative. I can no longer say I agree with any of the social principles of the left at all. Right? They demand that the death penalty be stopped. So they justify abortion on innocent babies. But if a criminal who has violated women, there's DNA evidence, if he gets executed, that's sad because maybe 2% of people on death row who are innocent get killed. So I've noticed something about the liberals. They will let the smaller percentage rule over the majority when it's supposed to be the opposite, when they say they're Democrats. And then they go about censoring everyone so that they can make their ideas look more popular when in reality they're not. And now they're using rhetoric to make everyone afraid of everyone who doesn't think like them. This is something you must be aware of. Muslims are already aware of how the media talks about them, but now these people, these liberals, are going to use the same tactics they're using on nationalistic Christian Republicans when it comes to American Muslim reverts. Okay, this is something that they're going to do, and we have to be ahead of the game. And one way we can do this is that if Muslims have businesses and we all hire each other, we all spend our money with each other, we cannot be under their economic boycott. They can't put the collar on us, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it to where you will deal with it because you want your job. And this is very powerful, right? They can kick you out of university for sharing your opinions online. They want to have it to where you do have a social media death penalty where you'll get banned off of any app because you don't agree with their agenda. And their activists will dox people and go to their homes and try to get their sponsors. If you had like sponsors on your channel, they'll like call in like swarms and try to get that sponsor to drop you. They do a lot of different tactics. So this is why we Muslims, we must, even if you open a little business secretly, because they have anti-discrimination laws, hire only Muslims. And also, I think more Muslims should run for office, and we should start really pushing back on them. And we're going to have a hard battle because we're going to have Christians who are going to freak out, but maybe little by little we can win them over to our side. But we cannot exchange our morality for economic policy, because the bounty comes from Allah. It's not going to come from these people. And if we have to do without so that we can vote and put in and live a more moral lifestyle, more ethical lifestyle, I think that's more important. Because this dunya is temporary, so why are we going to sell our morality for a job, for a school, for a title, and completely go along with the flow of where the liberals are going? They won't even let regular people talk about it. I've seen so many normal people get deplatformed. And you're like, these were just normal people. But the left categorizes them with all their buzzwords. This is why Muslims have to get smart. We have to get smart in our strategies. And they're going to these liberals, atheists, who some Muslims are siding with. They're going to pass legislation where you have to hire a diversity hire. You have to hire somebody whose lifestyle is antithetical to your religion. And that's how they're going to get close to you and break you down. And then before you know it, their magnetism, their energy is going to be on you, and you're going to little by little let go of your faith. Or that person will say they don't like the way you treat them, and they'll get you in trouble with human resources, the HR department, or something like that. There's going to be a lot of trickery that's going to go on, and this is why we have to be smart. In Utah, the Mormons used to have, when they would hire some people, you'd have to go to the bishop, and then you'd have to get a recommendation, and they did some type of religious, like how long have you been in the church, and then you'd get a certain job at the Deseret industry places. And I have seen some strategies of that, and I have seen some strategies where Catholic charities, before they gave certain charities, they kind of made sure you were an actual Catholic. I remember listening to an interview of a guy who crossed the border. He broke his leg, and he was trying to get some charity, and they kind of were like, are you a Catholic? Just to make sure he wasn't a scammer. And it's okay for religious centers to donate to non-religious people who are not their religion, but if they want to donate to someone of their religion, that's their prerogative, right? But these liberals, what they're going to do is they're going to mandate that certain types of people get into your areas against your will. This is why Muslims have to get smart, and we have to sponsor each other and help each other so that we don't get stuck in their system, right? We have to have our own networks, our own ways of giving educational materials, sponsoring each other, holding each other to a higher moral code, and not being afraid to be alone. So when campus is in person, and I'm going to be in my classes, and I wear the niqab or I wear the hijab, and I'm in person, it will probably shock a lot of people who knew me before. Probably a lot of professors too, especially some of the more liberal atheist ones. But I'm going to announce myself as somebody who's more conservative leaning. And this will bring the hammer down, because once the left knows you're not with them, they will try to annihilate you from the face of everything you have. They'll try to take everything you have. This is one of the strategies that Antifa and this new militant faction that's rising up in America, that's what they're trying to do. And they've been letting us know when they tear down statues, when they do book burnings, when they attack banks, when they loot, when they do this, it was no longer just about one specific issue. This is about changing the morality of America, and the morality that they're pushing, they don't even want you to be able to disagree with them, state it, and they just want to throw buzzwords at you, and it's only going to cause more division. So, this is why Muslims, they must understand it's not just about economic policy. It is about social policy. And the more I'm realizing how this smug cockiness and haughtiness that these liberals use to laugh at you, we have to have thick skin and to be steadfast. Now I completely understand why Allah demands us to be like that. We're patient. And now we're all going to be kind of like Habibs in a way, right? Dealing with, smug conners, let's put it that way. And we have to be strong even if we're alone. Even if we're alone and no one wants to talk to us, and even if we're on campus and we don't have a lot of friends, even if we are the only Muslims in our neighborhood, we must stand strong and firm and have our feet planted, and we cannot turn our back to them, and we cannot look away, and we cannot deflect and ignore. And we have to talk to our kids when they come home from school and ask them, what did you learn about today in class? Okay? We have to be okay with being poorer, and we have to have also the more wealthy Muslims to help the poorer ones to establish themselves. We need to start creating logos of Muslim owned. We need to do that. We need to get serious about the economics part, because that is how the left liberals keep us in a little pocket of control. Christians have started to do this, but they haven't done it enough. Jews do this a lot. I mean, that's one thing I've watching them. They give a lot of finance to each other, and they're very tight in their communities. And I think us Muslims all across the world must do that through the digital sphere. And if you're in America, or you're in France, or you're in Italy, you're in Spain, where a place where Muslims are not the majority, you must prepare these networks. And if you're in a Muslim country, solidify it even more. We need to start creating, websites that are everything here is Muslim owned, right? Have a picture of the store owner and a story of why their company is this. And then Muslims actually getting into good companies that are organic, that have sustainable business practices, good ethical codes, humane certified, non-GMO. We have to start getting serious, because we say, oh, well, we'll just buy, the non-believers can buy from us. But we must reduce how much we buy from them, because these corporations are sponsoring the left liberals in America. Right? They're giving money to these certain politicians who are creating policies that go against what we as Muslims want. We have to be careful and cautious. We have to pay attention and be aware, and we have to unify in this way. And if we start working for each other as Muslims, we will be stronger and less afraid, and we won't have to hide about our opinions. And they won't be able to dominate us and harm us in this way. So this is why I think liberal atheists are wrong when they tell people in America that it's all about economics and it's not about cultural or social issues. It is, because we have to protect our children, and we want to raise moral, ethical people. And Why should we trust people who have no codified law and they follow their own desires and they worship their own minds and they do whatever a lab coat says? We are different. We accept that there's going to be justice in the hereafter, reward in the hereafter, and that this world is temporary and we will enter a new dimension. We will enter into a new state of being, and we feel we will be held accountable for everything we did in life, when the atheists don't. So why are we going to trust them to lead us for social issues in this realm? They are not the people who we must follow and help. We need to help each other instead of helping them. This is why if we get more money and we help each other, we can build more Islamic schools. We can do more Islamic scholarships for people to study. We have to help each other. We have to get serious about that. Let me know what you think. But this is why I don't think I'll ever vote liberal or Democrat again unless that particular person on social issues is more conservative. Because it used to be you look at a candidate for their economic and social policy. Now, I'm going to focus less on the economic and more on the social, because the social is going to impact our children more, because the social decay is open and abundant in our faces and is broadcasted daily and pushed upon us. More than, a certain trade policy with Cuba, right? So if we focus on social and cultural issues, the economics follows that. And if we Muslims operate on a system outside of their structure, we will be immune from their control, in a certain aspect at least. What do you think?